Post-traumatic stress disorder is a psychological disorder with a long history of incapacitating hundreds of thousands of individuals who are in combat or experience traumatic events in their lives. PTSD can occur after witnessing or experiencing life-threatening events such as military combat, terrorist encounters, serious accidents, and/or violent or physical assaults. Individuals who suffer from PTSD often experience or relive the event through nightmares and flashbacks. PTSD sufferers feel estranged and detached and struggle with sleeping. These symptoms can be severe and significantly impair a person's daily life. PTSD is marked by clear biological changes as well as psychological symptoms. PTSD is complicated by the fact that it frequently occurs in conjunction with related disorders such as substance abuse, anxiety, and depression, problems with memory and cognition, and other problems with physical and mental health. The disorder is also associated with an impaired ability to function in social and family life events, which can manifest its occupational instability, marital problems, and divorce, and difficulties in parenting. Many members return from military combat in Iraq and Afghanistan war, and they are greatly suffering from PTSD. As social workers, there is a substantial need to support and assist these war heroes and disabled veterans in hopes for their recovery and the ability to function in society. Documented PTSD sufferers have been more oppressed and disfranchised as a population. Here is a quick YouTube video of a real-life combat experience condensed down into small videos.
It's an early morning in Kajaki, Afghanistan. A platoon of Marines with 1st Battalion, 6th Marine Regiment are awakened by the sound of mortars impacting their position near the Helmand River. Patrol Base, Georgetown. Without time to fully dress, the Marines rush outside to engage the enemy.
Everybody throws gear on, runs out. We get our positions established, and squad leaders take control.
Gets you out of nowhere. I'm in a sleeping bag still, so all of a sudden you hear the flare going off, RPG, and then fires just start going off.
Just to the northwest of us, across the Helmand River, they have a ridge line up there, and there's caves in the ridge line that they'll crawl into, and they engage us from there. We're the most forward unit in the green zone from 5 White House Front Battalion. So with us here, we lock down the green zone on this side.
IDF, and then 30 mics hitting. It just got really bad real quick.
Tree! Hit the tree!
When we started going Winchester, started losing ammo. By the time after a couple hours, we were probably had 100 still left for 50 cal, and that was it.
Hey, gunshot right here! Get in! Sniper! Sniper!
Hey, we took a round right there. Gunshot!
IDF 30 millimeter grenades hitting inside the compound, getting close, real close. I mean, took a casualty, took a couple casualties. You hear about people being battle tested. This one tested the boys.
We're still taking indirect. We're still taking small arms. We have to get him on the bird as fast as possible.
Where's the bird landing?
It's the only place. We have to be fast. All right?
Been one hell of a day. I mean, you're thinking, yeah, regular patrol, any other day. It ain't happening that way. I mean, I definitely teach a lot of people, like, everyone's got to be ready from now on. I mean, you never know what's going to happen from now on. We lost one person, injuries. I mean, who knows what's going to happen next. We still got some time left.
Another day, man. Another day.
Well, I mean, hopefully whoever sees this will actually notice what actually happens. I mean, at the end of the day, we're the ones out here fighting this fight and then just breaking hearts sometimes.
Approximately 41% of the general population will experience at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. Approximately 5.6% of the general population will go on to develop post-traumatic stress disorder. However, certain subsets of the general population have a greater incidence of traumatic events and PTSD. Veterans are one such group who may experience more frequent and severe trauma than the rest of the population with a higher prevalence of PTSD. PTSD is a pervasive problem among military members who have experienced combat. The lifetime prevalence of combat-related PTSD in the U.S. combat veteran ranges from about 6% to 31%, with over 21.2 million military veterans in the U.S. population, with approximately 1.3 to 6.6 million veterans who will experience PTSD during their lifetimes. Since September 11, 2001, over 2.4 million American service members have served in Iraq and Afghanistan, with over 1 million service members deployed twice or more to combat war zones. Consequently, the Veteran Health Administration and military healthcare systems have seen a dramatic increase in combat-related PTSD and depressive and/or anxiety disorders. Over 54% of the approximately 934,000 veterans utilizing Veterans Health Administration facilities since 2001 have received diagnosis of mental health disorders of PTSD in 29.4% of the cases, 23% of depressive disorders, and 20.7% anxiety disorders. And those are the most frequent mental health disorders seen at the Veterans Health Administration facilities. Despite popular belief, post-traumatic stress disorder is not a new medical phenomenon that surfaced during the Vietnam War. It has affected warriors for more than 2,700 years. Every person who has ever been called to service or to defend their country is at a possible risk of experience in a PTSD. In 1980, the American Psychiatric Association published a standard diagnosis for victims who have been experienced to trauma. The Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 3rd edition, wasn't accepted as a standard by the Veterans Administration. Luckily, today, the VA has made progresses in treating and understanding PTSD, which I will be discussing further. PTSD and suicide go hand in hand. When symptoms of PTSD are mild, they go undiagnosed and can be confused with conditions with similar symptoms such as mental illnesses, including depression, and substance abuse disorders. In 2005, 1,821 military members committed acts of suicide, which is 20% of the nation's total suicide count. Researchers have also found that combat exposure increases the risk of suicide, as well as the likelihood of PTSD, which itself increases the risk of suicide. Of that group that committed suicide in 2005, 96.7% were male, 67% used firearms, 47% were married, 47% were depressed, and 28% of them had PTSD. Will be recording a Marine who served in the military for 8 years and had 2 tours in Iraq who suffers from PTSD. So I will be interviewing him now. Hey, Robert, thank you for taking the time to come out for this interview today. Can you give us a quick, brief history of your military career?
I served 8 years in the United States Marine Corps. First duty station was in Jacksonville, North Carolina, on New River Air Station. Second one was in Cherry Point, North Carolina. Also, I went to Iraq for a year straight, 14 months straight, and also a 9-month deployment as well, both in Iraq. Both times, and the whole time I was in the Marine Corps, I was a cryogenics as well as a cryogenics instructor. What that does, we produced oxygen and nitrogen for the aircraft and pilots to breathe, as well as a CDQAR, which is a collateral duty inspector.
What were your deployments like? Where were your sleeping arrangements like?
The first deployment, we were there when it was pretty new. Boots were still on the ground. There wasn't the best accommodations for sleeping, so we slept in what they call Quonset huts, and it was a very large room with a bunch of cots. Probably about a good 150 people at one time. The second one was a lot better. They were called cans. It was probably about a 8x10 room that had AC, which was really nice over there since it got really hot. And that was we shared that with 2 people at the same time, and those were pretty much the best sleeping arrangements that you could have.
During your deployment time, were you ever waken up by gunfire or aircraft carriers or anything like that? Or did you ever get a good solid rest time where you weren't stressed out about being deployed?
Both deployments were very different, but the first one I did a lot of flying with liquid oxygen. I went to what they call FOBs, TQ, AQ, and KV. Flying with them, we had to do a lot of staying the night, and those were the times that were pretty much the hardest because we were getting a lot of indirect fire. You get mortars, you'd hear gunshots, especially at night. Mainly you'd watch jets take off and go, drop bombs on the enemy. There was a couple times where there were, I would say pretty close to the base, people trying to, get over the gate. There was a time at night where this lady came to the gate. She had her son with her, and at the time she was working on the base, and they called them TCNs, Third Country Nationals. And the lady and her son blew up the front gate. That was at night, and at that time, sleeping was not an option. The alarms went off, and at that time, we all had to go to our bunkers to be safe. Other than that, sleeping was, normal. I think as a Marine, you learned to be able to sleep through anything and anywhere.
What was it like when you returned home after being in a war zone for so long?
The first time I went for 14 months straight, and in between that, you're allotted 15 days. So after the 8 months there, I got to come home for 15 days. My family said I was, still normal, still crazy old Robbie. Coming back from after the end of it, I thought I was normal. A lot of people noticed a lot of different things. My wife had said I've been a little distant, quiet, angry. Anger is a big one. And the second one, coming back, I was definitely not as caring. I guess I don't know the word. I checked out. So I was very angry a lot, had a lot of issues sleeping, nightmares. And with that, I was different.
What eventually had you get out of the military, and were you supported by the military in the transition to become a civilian?
Getting out of the military was not my option. I didn't want to get out. I ended up developing a heart issue, which made me get out. After getting out, the transition was pretty tough, but there was a lot of help. I went to the VA, and they allotted me a social worker, as well as a lot of other medical professionals, just to diagnose with. I got diagnosed with PTSD, a lot of issues, medical issues with my back and my knees. PTSD was the biggest one, and with the allotted social worker, they allotted me to talk with her, anytime I needed to. But mainly, they set up sessions for me to talk at least once a month with her for a couple hours, and it allowed me to, I guess, vent and allowed me to, get things off my chest that ultimately you're not allowed to do.
Department of Veteran Affairs.
The VA, it took a while. Obviously, if you read, there's a lot of issues with the VA, and being seen is one of them. When I got out, I actually put in a claim through the VA, and once I put the claim in, it took a couple months before I was even seen for the first thing. And after that, they asked me more questions, and they just kept setting up more appointments, which ultimately took every bit of almost a year before everything was pretty much said and done.
What type of studies did they do? Did you have to do any studies about your nightmares, or did you meet with psychiatrists, or was it just veteran doctors or military doctors that you saw?
Initially, when I went and seen somebody, it was just a general person that was taking all my issues. They wrote down, or they asked me to write down a list of things that had been bothering me that could possibly be service related. I had written a lot of things down, mainly to talk about the PTSD. It wasn't really, I never said PTSD because I didn't really think I had it. But a lot of the things I wrote were, I was having really bad nightmares. I couldn't sleep. There's a lot of issues with anger, as well as, I had anxiety. I was not really a fan of areas, and they were asking me about these. So once they asked me and I told them, what they did is they referred me to different physicians, sleep studies to, check and make sure everything was okay. They talked to, I think they're psychiatrists or the VA social workers. What they did is, they would evaluate me, see how I was doing, see if I was feeling better, gave me prescriptions, so on and so forth. And I was pretty much like I wouldn't say a lab rat, but they were trying to see what the root issue of my issues were.
When you found out you were separating from the military, did the Marine Corps advise you to go to the VA, or was that something that you took upon yourself to do?
The Marine Corps, you like to think it's an entity in itself that likes to help everybody out, and it's true, and we're all very passionate for each other and look out for each other. But on the way out of the Marine Corps, nobody advised me and said anything about the VA. I had to do my own research. And within doing that research, what pretty much drove me to do that is my family. My wife and son. I knew that getting out, I had to make sure I was getting help to make sure that, I could, help my family out as well. So with that said, I took it upon myself, did the research, and went and seeked out an actual medical or DAV, which is a disabled veteran representative. And I did some research, and they said that instead of going to them, I should actually go to an actual Veterans Affairs representative. So I took it upon myself, and I did that myself.
Have any of your fellow military service members separated from the military at this time, and did they have similar experiences as you?
I would say more of my friends have actually separated due to issues as well. I have a bunch of actual friends that actually went to the VA. They asked me, what my experience was. I told them, tried to guide them because nobody had guided me. And most of them are still, coping with their issues as well, and, And like going back to how long it took, a lot of them, it took just as long before they were even seen. A big one that really plays a big role in my life was one of my best friends. He did 2 tours back to back to Iraq, one and then Afghanistan for the second one. And talking about the VA, he was a gunner on top of a Humvee, and he was what they call a grunt, a ground unit guy. And he's been blown up twice on their Humvee from IEDs. He's lost a total of 6 people in his squads, and his issues, I believe, surpass most people's. He has a lot of issues. When he got back from the first deployment, we went to a party, and everybody was, so happy to see him. And there was a couple people that would ask him, "Hey, how was Iraq?" And it would set him off. And back then we didn't really think of anything about it. He's just a hardcore Marine going crazy. But I look back at it now and I see that that's a big part of PTSD. And the second time he got blown up, he came back, same things. Now that he's out, which was not his choice, I believe he got in trouble and got busted down in rank, causing it to where he was not allowed to re-enlist. I do possibly believe that was due to his anger issues, as well as his insubordinate due to losing his fellow members. And I think that played a big role. After him getting out, I talked to him about the VA. I think it's more of a pride thing for him. I know that he has gone in a couple times, and he'll check himself in for a weekend. And it's almost like a way for him to get away from reality, I guess you would say. But I think for him, the VA is there to help him, and I think for his pride, he doesn't want to, what they call, put in a VA claim for PTSD. They said that he has it, but he doesn't want to accept it. I think that's probably the most severe case that I know. But like I said, most of the other friends, they go to the VA. VA helps them, within the best means that they can.
Okay, thank you. Many combat veterans suffer from PTSD alongside other mental illnesses. Mainly, as discussed previously, is depression and anxiety. These additional mental illnesses are debilitating for the treatment of PTSD sufferers. Currently, there is little proven pharmacotherapies that are effective in treating PTSD. I found a study which was conducted to reveal the impact of SSRIs and triglyceride antidepressants. 773 combat veterans were evaluated for this study. SSRIs and triglyceride antidepressants occurred more quickly in the effects of reducing anxiety and depression, which related to PTSD. It impacted different neurotransmitters and neurological pathways. This study concludes that the use of SSRIs and triglyceride antidepressants should be the first consideration in treating combat veterans with PTSD. This type of medication will alleviate some symptoms relative to cognitive dimensions and intrusive memories. In order for military members to get back functioning within society once they are released from active duty, there is a process that they must go through. Currently in place is the Department of Veteran Affairs. There are various ways that you can go about using the Veterans Affairs. It's not a requirement that you have to do. However, many combat veterans do choose to go through the VA to receive benefits for their time of service. Eligibility for most VA benefits is based on discharge from active duty military service under other than dishonorable conditions. Some military personnel may even be eligible for a certain VA benefit while on active duty when they have completed 90 days of service during wartime or conflict periods of 2 years of military service. Benefits can include educational training, life insurance, reduce of payments, home loans, disability compensation and pension, vocational rehab and employment, reemployment benefits, unemployment compensation, medical care, dental care, family and survivor benefits as well. Generally speaking, however, the VA pays monthly tax-free benefit to eligible veterans, dependents, reservists, and service members to help finance the cost of your family and potential family members and your education. The VA also provides financial compensation to veterans who have sustained military-related injuries and or pre-existing injuries resulting a disability. PTSD is the most common psychiatric disorder for which veterans seek and receive compensation. In 2011, veterans who are adjusted as disabled as a result of the military related injury are awarded compensation substantially identified as service connected. Based on the extent of the injury, veterans are then provided a service-connected rating that ranges from 0 to 100%, with a higher percentage rating equaling a greater amount of compensation awarded. Service-awarded veterans with a rating disability below 100% may apply for increase in disability rating and seek additional compensation. The number of veterans seeking receiving PTSD-related compensation has jumped from just over 10,000 in 1999 to over 437,000 veterans receiving compensation for PTSD at the end of the fiscal year of 2010. Overall, PTSD is a major issue for members in the military. The Department of Veteran Affairs has made great progresses in trying to support these members that are struggling. And as a social worker, I would like to continue to help and support military members who do so much for our country. With that said, thank you guys for listening to my presentation, and thank you. I really enjoyed doing the interview with Robert because it's very insightful to speak with somebody who did have firsthand experience working with the Department of Veteran Affairs as well as served our country. I do find that it's very interesting that he had to seek out help through the Department of Veteran Affairs, and as a social worker, that is something that I feel passionate about, that we should be reaching out to our veterans as opposed to them having to reach out to us. Next, I would like to go into Erickson's psychosocial developmental stages. PTSD affects combat war veterans mainly around the 5th stage of Erickson's psychosocial development and leads into the 6th. The 5th stage is identity versus identity confusion. Many service members join the military at 18 years old before they have resolved this crisis in their social development. They can go on to serve their country and their duty station. And while they're doing this, their duty stations, their leave, the times that they deploy, the career that is selected for them is all predetermined. And once they go on a deployment, they return home and they are struggling with issues of PTSD, and they're also in identity crisis. It is difficult for them to know what they want to do with their lives once they are no longer active duty military members. As social workers, we can help clients who have separated from the military work through this crisis and support them into finding a productive career. Actively fighting in war requires people to put their own needs to the side, and they have to do everything that they are instructed to do regardless of their own ideas or desires. So many times once they have served 10 years of the military, they get out and they have no idea what they want to do because they never resolved the 5th stage of identity versus identity crisis. And as social workers, we can go in and support them and help them to resolve and meet them where they're at and move forward in solving this crisis. They also run into the 6th stage of Erickson's developmental stages, which is intimacy, or finding intimate relationships with people. They are young men and women are fighting in war, and they struggle to resolve the conflict of intimacy versus isolation. Understanding that this population of military members is suffering from PTSD, as social workers, we can integrate them back into working productive members in social settings. Many men and women are forced to leave their families, and they struggle at home because of their career. And then throwing PTSD on top of it makes it a real struggle for combat war veterans to function within positive, intimate relationships. Social workers can help support and guide military members into smooth transitions back into their homes, as well as supporting them get treatment for PTSD and or other mental illnesses. and physical injuries that the service member may be experiencing.